Hi friends, welcome back to my channel. My name is Lauren, you may also call me Lo, and today's video is another book haul. So thank you so much for being here. I hope you're doing well, and let's get on into it. I have 23 books here, which is smaller than my normal book hauls. And it's been a really long time since I last filmed a book haul. I think my last one was in July. So I've been making a concerted effort to not accumulate books as quickly as I have in the past. But it's been a while and I do want to officially haul these books. So my plan is to start with the books that I've already read. Then I'll go into Book of the Month books. Then I'll go into Fairyloot and Illumicrate books. And then we'll just do the rest of the books that I've managed to accumulate since July. So there are 4 books here that I have already read and have already discussed on my channel, but I will show you them and summarize them for you and tell you what I thought about them very, very briefly. So first up we have What Moves the Dead by T. Kingfisher. This book is a retelling of The Fall of the House of Usher by Edgar Allan Poe. This was also featured in my Pink Books vlog, which came out earlier this month. And like The Fall of the House of Usher, this book follows our main character who learns that the Ushers are very sick and travels to their very gloomy, decrepit, old, spooky house. And there finds the last 2 members of the Usher family, Madeline and Roderick, very, very sick and dying. And over the course of the book, the Rodericks become more and more erratic. And then at the end of the book, 2 pretty major events happen that I can't spoil. So if you're interested, highly recommend picking this up. I gave it 4 stars. I gave the original story, well, I gave it 2 stars in my head. I didn't end up actually rating it because I don't think I understood it to the extent that I could have. But I highly, highly recommend this, and I do recommend reading that story before you read this because it definitely enhanced my enjoyment of this book. Next is Notes on an Execution by Danya Kukafka. I listened to this book and absolutely adored it. I gave it 5 stars and I really wanted to own a copy, so I went ahead and bought one. This I just want on my bookshelves. I want to revisit it at some point. It was phenomenal. So in this book we're following Ansel Parker. I keep saying Ansel Parker, but it's Ansel Packer, sorry in advance, who is a man living on death row, kind of in the last couple of days of his life before his execution. So that's the present timeline, and then we have past timelines kind of from the perspective of various women in Ansel Parker's life. And through the perspectives of those women in the past, we get a picture of who Ansel Packer really is. This book had a lot of commentary about the criminal justice system and the death penalty, and it just was a very fascinating book because it doesn't shy away from the fact that Ansel Packer has done horrible things, but it still makes you see him as a full-fledged human being who deserves more than what he's gotten and what he's getting. This was amazing. Highly recommend it. Next is Clara and the Sun, which I read in September. I gave this 4 stars. I really enjoyed it. And in this book, we're following Clara, who is an artificial friend, or an AF, which is basically an AI sort of robot thing that parents can buy their children to keep them company as a companion. This is sort of a futuristic sci-fi book in that way, but it's told from the perspective of one of those artificial friends, and we follow Clara as she's kind of waiting to be bought in the artificial friend store, and then we follow her as she is adopted by a family and kind of the aftermath of that. This book is hard to talk about without spoiling, but it was really, really great. I highly recommend it. And finally, of the books that I'm hauling that I've already read is Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zevin. This is another 4-star book that I really enjoyed, and in this one we're following Sam and Sadie, who met in childhood and became really good friends and then kind of had a falling out. And then in early adulthood, in college, they meet again and they decide to create this video game together, and the video game sees great success, and the two of them drop out of college and become these like video game creators and kind of professional partners. And it really follows their relationship over, I want to say, almost like 30 years. And while there's really fun like video game stuff going on in here, and Gabrielle Zevin makes you feel like you're playing a video game at times, it's also really about kind of those long-lasting, very deep friendships that you have in your life, and I thought this was a beautiful, amazing book. So with those 4 books out of the way, I'm going to start the haul of the books that I have not read yet, starting with Book of the Month books. If you've been around, you know that I am a Book of the Month subscriber, and I tend to add on the maximum amount that I can every month, so I end up with 3 books a month, usually. Even though I was trying not to accumulate books, I really couldn't help myself in that department. So we have quite a few to go through. So starting with July Book of the Month books, I chose Upgrade by Blake Crouch as my main pick for July. I have not read a Blake Crouch book yet, but I do want to catch up on his books eventually, and out of all the choices, this was definitely the one that caught my eye. At first, Logan Ramsey isn't sure if anything's different. He feels a little sharper, better able to concentrate, better at multitasking, reading a bit faster, memorizing better, needing less sleep. But before long, he can't deny it. Something's happening to his brain, to his body. He's starting to see the world and those around him, even those he loves most, in whole new ways. The truth is, Logan's genome has been hacked, and there's a reason he's been targeted for this upgrade. A reason that goes back decades to the darkest part of his past and a horrific family legacy. Worse still, what's happening to him is just the first step in a much larger plan, one that will inflict the same changes on humanity at large, at a terrifying cost. Logan's the one person in the world capable of stopping what's been set in motion. But to have a chance at winning this war, he'll have to become something other than himself. Maybe something other than human. And even as he's fighting, he can't help wondering, what if humanity's only hope for a future really does lie in engineering our own evolution? Sounds amazing. I'm very excited to get to this one. I feel like I've been getting more into sci-fi this year than I have in past years, and this just sounds really good. But I do also really want to get to Blake Crouch's backlist. As for add-ons, I added on The Cartographers by Peng Shepherd, which was like a main pick earlier this year in March. And I ended up adding this on later because Casey really loved this book, and I've heard really good things about it since then, and I'm just intrigued by it and really do eventually want to read it. Nell Young's whole life and greatest passion is cartography. Her father, Dr. Daniel Young, is a legend in the field and Nell's personal hero. But she hasn't seen or spoken to him ever since he cruelly fired her and destroyed her reputation after an argument over an old, cheap gas station highway map. But when Dr. Young is found dead in his office at the New York Public Library, with the very same seemingly worthless map hidden in his desk, Nell can't resist investigating. To her surprise, she soon discovers that the map is incredibly valuable and exceedingly rare. In fact, she may now have the only copy left in existence, because a mysterious collector has been hunting down and destroying every last one, along with anyone who gets in the way. But why? To answer that question, Nell embarks on a dangerous journey to reveal a dark family secret and discovers the true power that lies in maps. This one didn't spark my interest as much when I first read the description and saw it on Book of the Month, but since then, like I said, I've heard really good things, so I do want to get to this one. My second add-on for July is probably my most questionable choice that I've made on the Book of the Month app so far, and that is Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo. I DNF'd this book a couple of years ago. Like right after it came out, I DNF'd this. I got not very far in. I was listening to it and I just didn't like it, put it down, never thought about it again. But I have heard really good things about this, and sometimes it's just the audiobook, and I think there's a chance that it was just the audiobook with this. Obviously, I really, really want to love this book, so I am going to give it a try as a physical book, and we will see how that goes. Galaxy, Alex Stern, is the most unlikely member of Yale's freshman class. Raised in the Los Angeles hinterlands by a hippie mom, Alex dropped out of school early and into a world of shady drug dealer boyfriends, dead-end jobs, and much, much worse. In fact, by age 20, she is the sole survivor of a horrific, unsolved multiple homicide. Some might say she's thrown her life away, but at her hospital bed, Alex is offered a second chance to attend one of the world's most prestigious universities on a full ride. But what's the catch, and why her? Still searching for answers, Alex arrives in New Haven, tasked by her mysterious benefactors with monitoring the activities of Yale's secret societies. Their 8 windowless tombs are the well-known haunts of the rich and powerful, from high-ranking politicos to Wall Street's biggest players. But their occult activities are more sinister and more extraordinary than any paranoid imagination might conceive. They tamper with forbidden magic, they raise the dead, and sometimes they prey on the living. Next, obviously, is August Book of the Month books. The main pick for August for me was Daisy Darker by Alice Feeney. Alice Feeney is a pretty well-known thriller author at this point. I haven't ever read one of her books, but I really, really want to. So this will probably be the first one, even though it's the newest one, but like Blake Crouch, I really want to get to some books from her backlist as well. After years of avoiding one another, Daisy Darker's entire family is assembling for Nana's 80th birthday party in Nana's crumbling Gothic house on a tiny tidal island. They're finally back together one last time, and when the tide comes in, they will be cut off from the rest of the world for 8 hours. The family arrives, each of them harboring secrets. Then, at the stroke of midnight, as a storm rages, Nana is found dead. An hour later, the next family member follows. Trapped on an island where someone is killing them one by one, the Darkers must reckon with their present mystery, as well as their past secrets, before the tide goes out and all is revealed. This seems very similar to Agatha Christie's And Then There Were None. There are obviously a lot of books inspired by that story, but this definitely is giving that. It also kind of reminds me of The Guest List by Lucy Foley, which I didn't like that much, but the premise of this does seem similar. I hope that the execution of this is a little bit better than that one, but regardless, I am very excited to get to this. So one of my add-ons in August was Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow, and then the other one was A History of Wild Places by Shay Earnshaw. I've heard sort of mixed things about this book, but I've been intrigued by it for a very long time. The premise sounds really, really cool to me, so hopefully I love it, but again, I've heard sort of mixed things about it. Travis Wren has an unusual talent for locating missing people. Hired by families as a last resort, he requires only a single object to find the person who has vanished. When he takes on the case of Maggie St. James, a well-known author of dark, macabre children's books, he's led to a place many believed only to be a legend. Known as Pastoral, this reclusive community was founded by like-minded people searching for a simpler way of life. But soon after Travis stumbles upon it, he disappears, just like Maggie St. James. Years later, Teo, a lifelong member of Pastoral, discovers Travis's abandoned truck beyond the border of the community. No one is allowed in or out, not without the risk of bringing a disease, the rot, into Pastoral. Unraveling the mystery of what happened reveals secrets that Teo, his wife Calla, and her sister Bee kept from one another. Secrets that prove their perfect, isolated world isn't as safe as they believed, and that darkness takes many forms. I don't know, a wilderness, culty vibe book, like, sign me up. And finally, for my September Book of the Month books, my main choice was Other Birds by Sarah Addison Allen. This, I believe, is a debut novel. I've never heard of this author or of this book before I chose this, but out of all of the books that were available, this one definitely seemed like the one that I would like the most. Down a narrow alley in the small coastal town of Malo Island, South Carolina, lies a stunning cobblestone building comprised of 5 apartments. It's called the Delawisp, and it is named after the tiny turquoise birds who, alongside the human tenants, inhabit an air of magical secrecy. When Zoe Hennessy comes to claim her deceased mother's apartment at the Delawisp, she meets her quirky, enigmatic neighbors, including a girl on the run, a grieving chef whose comfort food does not comfort him, 2 estranged middle-aged sisters, and 3 ghosts. Each with their own story, each with their own longings, each whose ending isn't yet written. When one of her neighbors dies under odd circumstances the night Zoe arrives, she is thrust into the mystery of the Delawisp, which involves missing pages from a legendary writer whose work might be hidden there. She soon discovers that many unfinished stories permeate the place, and the people around her are in as much need of healing from wrongs of the past as she is. To find their way, they have to learn how to trust one another, confront their deepest fears, and let go of what haunts them. And my last 2 add-ons before we go into the rest of the books. So the first one I chose was actually an August option. It was one that kind of intrigued me in August, and I didn't end up picking it up, so I decided to put it into my September box, and that was Small Angels by Lauren Owen. This, I want to say, is a historical fiction, and I haven't been reading much historical fiction this year, but the ones that I have read I've really enjoyed, and this one sounds kind of like gothic and just my vibe. Lucia and her sisters grew up on the edge of Mockbeggar Woods. They knew it well, its danger, but also its beauty. As a lonely teenager, Kate was drawn to these sisters, who were unlike any people she'd ever met. But when they brought her into the woods, something dark was awakened, and Kate has never been able to escape the terrible truth of what happened. Chloe has been planning her dream wedding for months. She has the dress, the flowers, the perfect venue, Small Angels, a charming old church set alongside dense green woods in the village that her fiancé, Sam, and his sister Kate grew up in. But days before the ceremony, Chloe starts to learn of unsettling stories about Small Angels and Mockbeggar Woods. And worse, she begins to see, smell, and hear things that couldn't possibly be real. Now, Kate is returning home for the first time in years for Sam and Chloe's wedding. But the woods are stirring again, and Kate must reconnect with Lucia, her first love, to protect Chloe, the village, and herself. Now I'm second-guessing myself. I thought this was historical fiction, but it might be fantasy. I really think that Book of the Month classified this as historical fiction, though. And finally, I added on a book that I have been so interested in reading for so long, and I've been meaning to add it onto a box. So September was my time, and that is The Space Between Worlds by Micaiah Johnson. Multiverse travel is finally possible, but there's just one catch. No one can visit a world where their counterpart is still alive. Enter Kara, whose parallel selves happen to be exceptionally good at dying. From disease, turf wars, or vendettas they can't outrun, Kara's life has been cut short on 372 worlds in total. On this Earth, however, Kara has survived. Identified as an outlier and therefore a perfect candidate for multiverse travel, Clara is plucked from the dirt of the wastelands. Now she has a nice apartment on the lower levels of the wealthy and walled-off Wiley City. She works and shamelessly flirts with her enticing yet aloof handler Dell, as the 2 women collect off-world data for the Eldridge Institute. She even occasionally leaves the city to visit her family in the wastes, though she struggles to feel at home in either place. So long as she can keep her head down and avoid trouble, Kara is on a sure path to citizenship and security. But trouble finds Clara when one of her 8 remaining doppelgangers dies under mysterious circumstances, plunging her into a new world with an old secret. What she discovers will connect her past and her future in ways she could have never imagined, and reveal her own role in a plot that endangers not just her world, but the entire multiverse. Beginning around July, I want to say, I also got off the wait list for Illumicrate, and I was doing just the book only subscription, so I have a couple of books from Illumicrate. I ended up canceling my subscription after I got 3 books from them because I got off the waitlist for Fairyloot's adult only book subscription, and I think that that one's probably a little bit more suited to me. So starting with Illumicrate books, the first book I got was We All Fall Down by Rose Szabo. I believe this is a YA fantasy book. I had never heard of this author or this book until I got it in the mail, but it is a beautiful edition with sprayed edges, like all Illumicrate books, and I think this is absolutely stunning. I don't know about this book. I've read some reviews and I haven't heard great things, to be honest, based on those reviews, but I'll probably still give it a shot. In River City, where magic used to thrive and is now fading, the witches who once ruled alongside their powerful king have become all but obsolete. The crumbling government is now controlled primarily by the new university and teaching hospital, which has grown to take over half the city. Moving between the decaying old city and the ruthless new city, 4 young queer people struggle with the daily hazards of life: work, school, and dodging power-hungry cops and unscrupulous scientists, not realizing that they have been selected to play in an age-old drama that revives the flow of magic through their worlds. When a mysterious death rocks their fragile peace, the 4 are brought into each other's orbits as they uncover a deeper magical conspiracy. The next book I got from Illumicrate was The Drowned Woods by Emily Lloyd Jones. This one, again, beautiful sprayed edges, and it's got this kind of like, I don't know, marbly wavy thing going on, which I think is gorgeous. Once upon a time, the kingdoms of Wales were rife with magic and conflict, and 18-year-old Merid Mare is well acquainted with both. As the last living water diviner, she can manipulate water with magic, a unique elemental power many would kill to possess. For years, Mare has been running from the prince who bound her into his service and forced her to kill thousands with her magic. Now, all Mare truly wants is a safe, quiet life far from power and politics. But then Mare's old handler, the king's spy master, returns with a proposition. Use her powers to bring down the very prince that abused them both. With the help of a fey cursed man, a snarky thief, and a corgi that may or may not be a spy, Mare must decide if she's prepared to run for the rest of her life or stand and fight for her freedom and peace. Between the 2 Illumicrate books, I'm definitely more interested in this one. It's also YA, and that's the reason that I ended up canceling this subscription, because I wasn't that excited about the books that I was getting, and I was really excited to have the Fairyloot adult only subscription, but I couldn't really afford to do both. So this is the last Illumicrate book that I have. However, I did get the Illumicrate edition of Babel in August, as well as the Fairyloot edition of Babel in August, so I had both. This is the Fairyloot edition, and this is the one I decided to keep. I sold the Illumicrate one to my friend Elisa, and she's really excited to have that one, so it worked out. And as you can see, this one has a beautiful foiled cover. The spine is gorgeous. The sprayed edges are amazing. Like, I'm just all about this book, and I'm very excited to read this book. I cannot emphasize that enough. I have such a hefty fall TBR, but I'm going to fit this in if it's the last thing I do. All right, friends, my camera died while I was reading the summary for Babel. So I used the time that my camera was charging to put away some of the books that I already hauled, so my background probably has changed a little bit, but I'm just going to resume with the summary of Babel. And this isn't really a summary, well, it kind of is, but it's mostly like taglines, so it's very short. An act of translation is always an act of betrayal. Oxford, 1836, the city of dreaming spires. It is the center of all knowledge and progress in the world. And at its heart is Babel, Oxford University's prestigious Royal Institute of Translation. the tower from which all the power of the empire flows. Orphaned in Canton and brought to England by a mysterious guardian, Robin Swift thought Babel a paradise, until it became a prison. But can a student stand against an empire? I'm excited about every book in this haul, but this book out of all of them I think is the one that I'm like most eager to pick up immediately. Next are kind of the rest of the books that I've accumulated that aren't part of book subscriptions and that I haven't read yet. So first off, we have Magnolia Parks by Jessa Hastings. This is a book that everyone has been talking about on BookTube. It's really like gone around, and it's a book that I really was just like eager to read. So I picked it up, and there's no real summary on this book. The back says, "How many loves do you get in a lifetime?" But there is a little paragraph in here that might be the summary. I'm gonna read it anyway. How many loves do you get in a lifetime? How many people do you get to call yours? There are all sorts of loves in this world, not all of them, but most of them are beautiful. Some are old, some noble, some brave. Others are dishonorable and weak and make you so by association. Some are a low whisper on a somber night, some are maddening. Some you can't ignore. They slow burn inside of you, never quite going out completely, but you're too scared to dare to try to fan that flame. Some loves you pretend you don't feel, even when you can, even when you know you do, even if he's the first thing you think of in the morning, even if he's like a match in the darkened room of your heart. Because loving something how you love him is a painful love that puts rocks in your pockets and melancholy in your eyeballs. And if time has taught you anything, it's that it doesn't matter. You'll love him forever anyway. I've heard such great things about this book and this series, so naturally I had to go pick this up. I don't know when I'll get to it, but I'm very excited about it. My birthday was at the end of July, so I have 2 books coming up that are books that I got for my birthday. First up, we have Starfish by Akemi Dawn Bowman. This is a YA contemporary, and recently I haven't been reading as many YA contemporaries because I just haven't been that in the mood, but this is one that I've heard such good things about for such a long time, and I still am very eager to pick up. And I got this book from Michelle, from Michelle's library, for my birthday, so thank you, Michelle, if you're watching this. Kiko Hamura has always had a hard time saying exactly what she's thinking. With a mother who makes her feel unremarkable and a half-Japanese heritage she doesn't quite understand, Kiko prefers to keep her head down, certain that once she makes it into her dream art school, Prism, her real life will begin. But then Kiko doesn't get into Prism. At the same time, her abusive uncle moves back in with her family. So when she receives an invitation from her childhood friend to leave her small town and tour art schools on the West Coast, Kiko jumps at the opportunity in spite of the anxieties and fears that attempt to hold her back. And now that she's finally free to be her own person outside of the constricting walls of her home life, Kiko learns life-changing truths about herself, her past, and how to be brave. The second book that I got for my birthday was The Dry by Jane Harper, and I got this from my sister. This was not on my wish list. In fact, I have never heard of this book before, nor have I read a Jane Harper book before, but it sounds really good, and she said it was really dark, so I love that for me. Federal agent Aaron Falk hasn't been back to the place where he grew up in 20 years, not since he and his father were run out of town. Even when Falk gets word that his childhood best friend, Luke, is dead and his entire family murdered, Falk still isn't planning on going back. But then he gets a note. Luke lied, you lied, be at the funeral. And just like that, Falk is swept back into the secrets of the place and people he left so long ago. When Falk returns for the funeral amid the worst drought in a century, long-buried mysteries resurface, along with the lies that accompanied them. And Falk will discover anew what he's known all along. Sometimes you have to go back home in order to finally leave your past behind. Next is a book that I first saw on Jan Agaton's channel, and that is The Bennett Women by Eden Apia Kubi. Welcome to the Bennett House, the only all-women's dorm at prestigious Longbourn University, home to 3 close friends who are about to have an eventful year. EJ is an ambitious Black engineering student. Her best friend Jamie is a newly out trans woman studying French and theater. Tessa is a Filipina astronomy major with guy trouble. For them, Bennett House is more than a residence. It's an oasis of feminism, femininity, and enlightenment. But as great as Longbourn is for academics, EJ knows it can be a wretched place to find love. Yet the fall season is young and brimming with surprising possibilities. Jamie's prospect is Lee Gregory, son of a Hollywood producer and a gentleman so charming he practically sparkles. That leaves EJ with Lee's arrogant best friend Will. For Jamie's sake, EJ must put up with the disagreeable, distressingly handsome, not quite famous TV actor for as long as she can. What of it? EJ has her eyes on a bigger prize anyway, launching a spectacular engineering career in the real world she's been hearing so much about. But what happens when all their lives become entwined in ways no one could have predicted, and EJ finds herself drawn to a man who's not exactly a perfect fit for the future she has planned? Next is a book I'm just super excited about. It's like a fun murder mystery that I think isn't going to take itself too seriously, so I'm very excited about it, and that is Death by Dumpling by Vivian Chen. The last place Lana Lee thought she would ever end up is back at her family's restaurant. But after a brutal breakup and a dramatic workplace walkout, she figures that a return to the Cleveland area to help wait tables is her best option for putting her life back together, even if that means having to put up with her mother, who is dead set on finding her a husband. Lana's love life soon becomes yesterday's news once the restaurant's property manager, Mr. Feng, turns up dead after a delivery of shrimp dumplings from Ho Lee. But how could this have happened when everyone on staff knew about Mr. Feng's severe, life-threatening shellfish allergy? Now, with the whole restaurant under suspicion for murder, and the local media in a feeding frenzy, to say nothing of the gorgeous police detective who keeps turning up for takeout, it's up to Lana to find out who is behind Feng's killer order before her own number is up. This is part of a series called the Noodle Shop Mystery Series, and I just had to. You know I had to. Next is a book that I've seen a lot of times, and I genuinely have never read the summary for this book, so I'm very excited to. All I know is that it's a queer book that people seem to be really loving, and that is Patricia Wants to Cuddle by Samantha Allen. When the final 4 women in competition for an aloof, somewhat sleazy bachelor's heart arrive on a mysterious island in the Pacific Northwest, they prepare themselves for another week of extreme sleep deprivation, invasive interviews, and, of course, the salacious drama-eager viewers nationwide tune in to devour. Each woman came on the catch for her own reasons. Brand sponsorships, followers, and yes, even love. But they've all got their eyes steadfastly trained on their respective prizes. Enter Patricia, a temperamental, woefully misunderstood local, living alone in the dark, verdant woods and desperate for connection. Through twists as unexpected as they are wildly entertaining, the self-absorbed cast and jaded crew each make her acquaintance atop the island's tallest and most desolate peak, finding themselves at the center of an action-packed thriller that is far from scripted, and only a few will make the cut. 2 more books. First, we have a book that I've heard really great things about also, and that is Writers and Lovers by Lily King. This has been on my want to read list on Goodreads, I want to say for years, like a really, really, really long time, so I'm glad to finally get my hands on it. Blindsided by her mother's sudden death, and wrecked by a recent love affair, Casey Peabody has arrived in Cambridge, Massachusetts in the summer of 1997 without a plan. Her mail consists of wedding invitations and final notices from debt collectors. A former child golf prodigy, she now waits tables in Harvard Square and rents a tiny, moldy room at the side of a garage where she works on the novel she's been writing for 6 years. At 31, Casey is still clutching onto something nearly all her old friends have let go of, the determination to live a creative life. When she falls for 2 very different men at the same time, her world fractures even more. Casey's fight to fulfill her ambitions and balance the conflicting demands of art and life is challenged in ways that push her to the brink. I'm excited to pick this one up. It seems like it might be more character-driven than plot-driven, which kind of scares me, but I like to push myself out of my comfort zone, so we'll see how this one goes. Last but not least, I got a book that I'm so excited about. And once you see what it is, you'll know why. And that is Carrie Sato is Back by Taylor Jenkins Reid. If you don't know, Taylor Jenkins Reid is one of my favorite authors. I've given her multiple 5-star reviews. This takes place sort of in the same world, I guess, as The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo and Malibu Rising, which I read this year and gave 5 stars, and I also gave Evelyn Hugo 5 stars. So I'm very excited to read this. I'm like a little worried because Carrie Sato is a character in Malibu Rising who's not likable at all. No matter what Taylor Jenkins Reid writes about, I'm going to pick up the book, so I'm very excited to finally have this one, and I will hopefully read it very, very soon. Carrie Sato is fierce, and her determination to win at any cost has not made her popular. But by the time she retires from tennis, she is the best player the world has ever seen. She has shattered every record and claimed 20 Grand Slam titles, and if you ask Carrie, she is entitled to every one. She sacrificed nearly everything to become the best, with her father Xavier as her coach. A former champion himself, Xavier has trained her since age 2. But 6 years after her retirement, Carrie finds herself sitting in the stands of the 1994 US Open, watching her record be taken from her by a brutal, stunning player named Nikki Chan. At 37 years old, Carrie makes the monumental decision to come out of her retirement and be coached by her father for one last year in an attempt to reclaim her record. Even if the sports media say they never liked the battle axe anyway. Even if her body doesn't move as fast as it used to, and even if it means swallowing her pride to train with a man she once almost opened her heart to, Bo Huntley. Like her, he has something to prove before he gives up the game forever. I don't know, we'll see how it goes, but like I said, if Taylor Jenkins Reid writes a book, I am going to buy it. Alright, that is it for my book haul. I hope you enjoyed it. If you're new to my channel, please consider liking this video and subscribing. I put one bookish video out every week, sometimes 2, if I can pull it off. If you're still here, thank you so much for being here. I always really appreciate it, and I will see you next time.